Now, Walz is weird, but he disguises it under the costume of phony compassion, a fake politician who masks destructive ideas under the guise of empathy. At a 2017 town hall, he implied 10-year-old boys should be able to invade girls' bathrooms because it's all—
Tim Walz is now saying about Trump supporters, and forgive me, I'm just reading a quote from Tim Walz, "I think I could kick most of their ass."
Oh boy, he'd be in trouble.
Is there any way to know?
Well, he's a loser, you know, I mean, the guy's a loser.
Think you know the story? Think again. Because this wasn't just a political detour, it was a full-blown crash into crazy town. Gutfeld and Donald Trump, yes, that explosive duo, joined forces to roast Tim Walz like it was Independence Day, and he was the last hot dog on the grill. 1 minute, Walz was delivering calm, polished speeches, and the next, boom! He was dodging fiery sarcasm and ego grenades like a clumsy contestant on a game show set in a war zone. So what lit this wildfire? Why is Minnesota suddenly the nation's biggest punchline? Brace yourself. It's more embarrassing than a politician trying to sing Bon Jovi at a karaoke bar in Mar-a-Lago. And yes, that actually happened.
Tim Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank and service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there," and then ran away.
I think I would have won. Susie would say I would have won Pennsylvania easily anyway, even if the governor ran, the real governor, not the governor from Minnesota, he's a sick puppy, that guy. That poor guy, I feel sorry for him. But they made a bad choice with him.
Tim Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank and service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there," and then ran away.
I think I would have won. Susie would say I would have won Pennsylvania easily anyway, even if the governor ran, the real governor, not the governor from Minnesota, he's a sick puppy, that guy. That poor guy, I feel sorry for him. But they made a bad choice with him.
They say real leaders have vision, but Tim Walz must have misread the memo and thought it said television, because the only screen he seems obsessed with is the one broadcasting his latest dramatic press conference, where he somehow manages to blame gravity, sunshine, or maybe even Gutfeld for whatever disaster just spiraled out of control on his watch. This man runs Minnesota like it's a broken video game. Every setting is on disaster mode, and he's out of lives. Think potholes are annoying? His policies are deeper, more damaging, and feel like they were designed to hit every single nerve on purpose.
With Walz, it's hard to even bring him up. He has a resting snitch face. You know? He forfeited his man card during COVID and the riots. And you're right. And also, at that diner, of course, he left early. So don't you find it weird that for a terrifying threat to democracy that Trump is, not a single interviewer in his history has approached him with—
Under Tim Walz's so-called leadership, Minnesota has become the political version of a frozen casserole, tossed in the back of the fridge since 2020 and now quietly mutating into something dangerous. It's bland, outdated, and quite possibly toxic. But guess what? He's still trying to serve it up with a fresh side of excuses we're too clueless to notice. Meanwhile, Gutfeld, armed with sarcasm that hits like a raccoon after 10 espressos, and Trump, charging in with the grace of a wrecking ball strapped to a monster truck, teamed up to absolutely torch this walking political disaster. And the sad truth? They barely had to lift a finger.
Yeah, this one's the core. We saw just recently Donald Trump's executive order to make it more difficult, specifically to women, trying to make it more difficult for women to be able to vote. We see one of the first things they do is try and restrict the vote.
Wait, so Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems? But it's further proof that the most dangerous thing for a leftist is a follow-up question, which is why you never hear.
This political takedown didn't even need a script. The comedy practically wrote itself. When you've got a governor who locked down an entire state so tightly during the pandemic that even Wi-Fi signals needed clearance to move, you'd think something, anything, would have improved by now. But no, the roads still look like they were pummeled by meteors. Taxes are climbing so high they might need parachutes. And crime? Minneapolis has turned into a real-life video game. Only there's no reset button and the graphics are even worse than real life. It's total chaos, and there's no one at the wheel.
I'm especially talking about these old white guys who seem to disappoint us on a regular basis in this country.
Dude. You're an old white guy. And you're right, you are a huge disappointment. I guess hating himself is the first thing he's nailed.
And what's Tim Walz's grand solution to this mess? Throw more money at committees, studies, and never-ending advisory panels. He's patching a collapsing dam with duct tape and a dream. He treats real crises like they're mild software glitches in a slide presentation. His whole approach seems to be, if I ignore it long enough, maybe it'll form a union and fix itself. This isn't leadership. It's full-blown theatrical procrastination dressed in a suit and tie.
Are people misreading Tim's odd greeting? The man of the hour, Tim Walz, brings us our second video of the day, and he's got a very weird way of greeting his wife of 30 years. Roll it. I want to see this in slow motion. You'll see Walz extends his hand to his wife. She grabs it. They shake. He pulls her close and then goes in for that non-friction hug, all the while still shaking her hand. I wish there was a word to describe that. Oh, yeah, weird.
Then Trump bursts onto the scene with the kind of chaotic firepower Minnesota didn't ask for, but absolutely deserves. He takes one glance at Walz's disaster of a record and laughs like someone just handed him a crown labeled most useless governor in the Midwest. Sure, Trump's no stranger to controversy, but next to Walz, he's looking like Winston Churchill in a red baseball cap. At least Trump does something, even if it's loud, outrageous, and barely makes sense. Meanwhile, Walz governs like a substitute teacher who lost the syllabus. Lots of talk, zero control. The only thing actually moving in Minnesota? The stampede of residents and businesses fleeing. It's a reverse Oregon Trail. No one's dying of dysentery here. They're drowning in taxes and crushed under policies that make no sense.
I think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have periods, but then I met Tim Walz.
Let's talk about the businesses under Walz's reign of confusion. Minnesota has become the place where companies go to suffocate under so many regulations, they actually start missing California. One poor soul just wanted to open a lemonade stand, ended up needing a zoning permit, a carbon footprint evaluation, and an environmental impact review just to sell lemonade. And education. You'd think a former teacher would know how to run a classroom. Instead, he's turned schools into social experiments. Algebra's optional, but pronoun pop quizzes? Mandatory. The only thing skyrocketing in Minnesota's education system is confusion.
On Minnesota, there were a lot of horrific details that came out today about the suspect who's been charged there. Have you called the governor yet or been able to speak to any of them?
I don't really call him. Look, I think the governor of Minnesota is so whacked out. I'm not calling him. Why would I call him? I could call him and say, hi, how you doing? The guy doesn't have a clue. He's a mess. So, I could be nice and call him, but why waste time?
We got ourselves in this mess because we weren't bold enough to stand up and say, you damn right we're proud of these policies. We're going to put them in, and we're going to execute them.
So, wait, you lost because you weren't woke enough? That's like telling Joy Behar she's not eating enough Doritos. That's like Jasmine Crockett saying, I gotta black this up.
Meanwhile, Trump just folds his arms and watches Walz bumble through press briefings like a dad trying to install Wi-Fi with no clue and zero patience. And Gutfeld? He's living his best life, turning Walz into a walking punchline that keeps on delivering. He once said, watching Walz lead is like watching a squirrel drive a forklift. Funny at first, until you see the damage. Walz announces big climate goals, then hops into a gas guzzler like nothing happened. He praises workers' rights, right up until unions actually demand something, and suddenly he's nowhere to be found. His pandemic rules were pure theater, quoting science one moment, then closing bars at 10 p.m. like COVID clocks out early. Even Trump couldn't hold back, especially when Walz left liquor stores open but shut down gyms. That speaks volumes, doesn't it?
The tampon king gets back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps. I wonder, is our strength our diversity?
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this.
And somehow, amazingly, Walz keeps a straight face through all of it. He genuinely believes no one notices the whole house burning down behind him. When crime explodes in Minneapolis, he starts babbling about community engagement. He's pitching yoga to a SWAT team. People aren't watching Netflix anymore. They're glued to crime apps just to survive. His economic plan? More like a map to keep the entire state stuck in a flooded basement. He wants to raise taxes on the wealthy, and in Minnesota that means anyone who paid rent this month. Gutfeld's not just roasting him. He's slow cooking him with precision. And watching Trump and Gutfeld actually agree on something? Now that's entertainment. Every time Walz gets hit with criticism, he doubles down like a gambler in denial. Question his bloated budget? He tosses more money at it. Ask about public safety? He throws empty slogans like parade confetti. Honestly, he probably thinks a motivational poster can fix a crime wave.
Quote, as a teacher, my number one responsibility in the classroom is the safety, security, and belongingness of every single child in that room. These are children my son's age, a 4th grader, a 10-year-old who just wants to go to the bathroom. And their identity is they are male or female, and they just go in that bathroom and use it. End quote. Sounds so folksy, you know? Belongingness. Yeah, they'll be belonging in therapy with this guy at the head.
Remember when Minneapolis flirted with the idea of dismantling the police? That was Walz's golden opportunity to lead. But instead of stepping up like a real leader, he tiptoed around it like a nervous parent afraid to discipline a toddler. The result? Chaos exploded. Crime skyrocketed. Confusion ruled. And the city started looking less like a capital and more like Gotham, with worse lighting. Gutfeld's coverage of Walz became therapy for Minnesotans desperate for someone, anyone, to say what they were all thinking. Their governor can't even organize his own socks, let alone a state. Trump wasted no time either, dragging out every blunder, every failed plan, every broken street, even every terrible haircut Walz ever had. And then came the budget. Oh, the disaster. Under Walz, taxpayer money vanished faster than excuses, into random pet projects, bloated studies, and a mountain of bureaucracy so big, even Trump looked shocked. When Walz promised bold infrastructure reform, people actually had hope, until they realized it meant hiring consultants to make PowerPoints about potholes. Meanwhile, Gutfeld was out there comparing Minnesota's roads to something out of Mad Max.
So this is Governor Walz. There he is. Do you know we're the same age? I know. I know. He looks like the founder of a law firm specializing in personal injury. He looks like the guy at church who remarries 1 month after his wife mysteriously passes away. He looks like the high school football coach who made sure everyone showered after.
And we haven't even touched Walz's war on landlords. His rent control plan sounded great in headlines, but in the real world, it was like evicting common sense itself. Small landlords packed up and left, big landlords jacked up prices, and renters were left freezing, literally. And Walz's brilliant fix? A task force, which in political terms means months of meetings just to agree on the definition of problem. Trump and Gutfeld didn't even have to step in at this point. The situation was collapsing on its own like a soggy tent in a thunderstorm. The same state that gave us Prince, Bob Dylan, and 10,000 Lakes is now being run like a chaotic college dorm. With no resident advisor in sight, Gutfeld joked that Walz leads using PowerPoint slides and pure confusion as a strategy. And transportation, it's a joke. Projects are late, budgets are blown, and the results are pathetic. He tried launching new rail lines, but forgot one key detail. Trains actually need to exist. Even Trump's infamous Infrastructure Week made more sense. Walz brags about clean energy while his government vehicles puff out more fumes than a NASCAR track. At this point, even Trump's jets are cleaner.